Good afternoon on what is a mild, grey and overcast day. It is Friday, the 6th of January 2023, and I'm in the Reading Nook with a parcel to contain a book, and of course I've got a nice hot cup of tea. Let's get the knife to this one, get it open. There we go. What we've got inside is a copy of this. Let's have a look. So, this is a book called Lost Realms. Now, end of 2022, as you would expect, all the shops, they have their sales, end of year sales, and that's quite normal. So, but I always go and check out the book sales because you can always find some interesting bargains, some books that came out in the course of the year, but you didn't pick up. And one of these was Lost Realms, Histories of Britain from the Romans to the Vikings by Thomas Williams. So, essentially what we've got here, we've got basically a bit of a blurb on there, a couple of congratulatory blurbs from the author. So what it says inside: as Tolkien knew, Britain in the Dark Ages was a mosaic of little kingdoms. Many of them fell by the wayside. Some vanished without trace. Others have stories that can be told. Elmet, Huis, Lindsay, Dunonia, Essex, Reged, Powys, Sussex, Forthrow. In Lost Realms, Thomas Williams, best-selling author of the Viking Britain, uncovers the forgotten origins and untimely demise of 9 kingdoms that hover in the twilight between history and fable, whose stories hum with saints and gods and miracles, with giants and battles and the ruin of cities. Why did some realms like Wessex, Mercia, Northumbria and Gwynedd prosper whilst those 9 fell? From Scottish Highlands to the Cornish coastline, from the Welsh borders to the Thames estuary, Williams brings together new archaeological revelations with the few surviving written sources to rebuild a lost world, a world where the halls of farmer lords linger as ghost marks in the soil, where the vestiges of hill forts and cling to rocky outcrops, and grey fields, barrow mounds shelter the bodies of the ancient dead. This is the age of Arthur and Urien, Bede and Taliesin, the Picts and Britons and Saxon migrations of magic, war, myth and miracle. In riveting detail, Williams uses Britain's ancient landscape to resurrect a lost past where lives were lived with as much vigour and joy as any other age, where people fought and loved and toiled and suffered grief and disappointment just as cutting as our own. In restoring some of the voices, he raises questions matching many we face today. How do nations form and why do some fail? Why do communities adapt? How do communities adapt to catastrophe? And how do people insulate themselves from change? How do we construct the past? And why do we like the people of early medieval Britain? Revere often finding in the tales of those who long gone a sense of curious belonging. So this then is a history book about what we normally refer to as the Dark Ages, that period between the time that Rome left the shores of Britain, so AD 300, sort of like the 4th century sort of time, 5th century, and the time when good, solid Anglo-Saxon kingdoms arose to withstand the Viking invasions, and then were subsumed into a thoroughly European outlook with the Norman invasion and defeat of Harold at the Battle of Hastings. So that's generally how we view history. That period is essentially the roughly sort of 600 years is known as the Dark Ages. Now, it's not entirely fair because we do have sources, we have histories, and archaeological evidence and so on that they weren't dark. It was just a case of we didn't know very much about them until really we delve into do a more scholarly examination of the sources, whether that's written down on vellum, or indeed in the soil, in the land. And I think there's much more to be told here than you normally think about. And it's evidence, sort of like, to a certain extent, you kind of get when I did history at school, they kind of rush through certain things. You sort of like, well, you did the Romans, and then you did Alfred of Wessex, then the Norman invasions, and then you sort of like you do Henry VIII and Elizabeth I. You might touch upon the English Civil War, and then it's sort of a quick canter through the beginning of the Middle Age to the Victorian era, and then, you know, World War I, World War II, and bang, you're up to date. Which is very much a kind of it's hitting the high points, as it were. But there's lots of interesting things in between, and this book, I think, you know, is going to cover it, is going to explore it, and there are other sources as well. And there is, you know, so what we've got to look at in here, for example, is looking at sort of like the little kingdoms. Now, there's another book called Lost Kingdoms, which is a bit older, which I've got a copy of, which is a fascinating, does exactly the same kind of thing for the kingdoms of Europe, which are lost in the amalgamation and formation of countries. You know, kingdoms which were principalities and duchies and little kingdoms and so on, and they would have been subsumed into a greater whole. France and Germany being the most obvious examples of that. France being multiple different nations, until eventually, you know, as a result of the 100 Years' War, they eventually kicked out the English. You know, because essentially, at one point, the crown of England had a very good claim to the crown of France. So you could have had, you know, an English-French realm at one point, as it was. Anyway, so we've got basically a map of where these kingdoms are located. So just an overview of the little kingdoms before we delve into the first one, which is Elmet in West Yorkshire, and we've got a little map there as well. And it's going to do the same for all of these. You know, lightly illustrated, but where necessary. So Gleiss, which I'm sure I am pronouncing wrong. Gloucestershire and Worcestershire. Here we go, map of it. I'm flipping through. We have so let's just, so I know there are illustrations in here. We've got in here, right, cold fingers, of course, because, you know, time of year. Tolkien's little kingdoms. I mean, it's sort of like that Tolkien himself would have been inspired by this history. It would have been impacted upon his, you know, had an effect upon his understanding and use of language as well. So yeah, that is Lost Realms, which I'm thoroughly looking forward to reading when I get a chance. Put that by the bedside table with the other huge pile of books, as you can possibly imagine. But I am a consumer of history. I essentially did sort of like my qualification in history is, you know, essentially is just an A level, but it's given me a base understanding. I like watching historical programs and gaining an understanding and so on, and reading about it. So yeah, an interesting counterpart, I think, to Lost Kingdoms if you have it, but one focusing upon essentially what would become England, and then Scotland and Wales and so on, and ultimately, you know, with through the vicissitudes of history, a united kingdom. Anyway, Lost Realms by Thomas Williams, worth tracking down, and if you're in the UK, finding in a sale. So, hope you've enjoyed this unboxing in the Nook. If you have, please click on the like button down below. And if you've got any comments or feedback, I do appreciate you taking the time to post those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to get more unboxings in the Nook, where you will see it out here with a parcel, which will contain a book or game, in this case a book, which I'll unbox and chat about to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea, then please do hit that subscribe button down below. Thanks again for watching another unboxing of the Nook. Be back again soon with another one. Bye for now.